Welcome, bienvenue, welcome once again to another Cladding Matters. Yes, it's the end of the week. Unfortunately, we're not joined by our gentleman who is right on the front line, Steve Day, because he's having to deal with a personal issue right now. But you've got us two discussing the matters of the moment. Today's topic is the two-speed system. Who gets fixed first and why? And as is traditional, Hamish, I'm going to start you off.
Right, good afternoon to you all. Not so sunny as it was last weekend.
No,
Particularly sort of down on the south coast, and it's darn sight cooler as well. This particular sort of week on our cladding matters, we're speaking about a subject which we've actually continued in a way through the week. I mean, yesterday, those of you who do actually follow our 4 different podcasts that we do during the course of the week would recollect that we were speaking about postcode lottery, and there was a winner. Now the challenge is what we're speaking about today. It's not so much the lottery. It's maybe something to do with the postcode. I don't think it's anything to do with the postcode whatsoever. And normally, when speaking about lottery, there's a winner somewhere. Not on this occasion.
No, I don't think anybody wins here, except perhaps some builders, maybe. I don't know.
Well, I mean, yes, I mean they're masterful. These master builders, and
Well,
so
the clue's in the name, isn't it?
now the challenge we do actually sort of have is what properties actually get fixed in the grand order of things. Now, we have heard over the past sort of 12 months, because we've been working on this for 12 months in the hope that we would actually be seeing some kind of reaction from those able to make decisions and make the appropriate decisions to get everything sort of put right. And we found as we move sort of through the whole thing, there's more and more we find wrong with what is the term remediation, which is applied to what's going, what needs to be done. And there's all sorts of different interpretations. And the saddest aspect is it's the interpretation or misinterpretation of what remediation really means, because we've got variation in the time when we sort of think back to 2017, when in actual fact Grenfell itself, that tragedy occurred in front of everybody's eyes. It wasn't because the authorities hadn't been warned that such and such a thing could happen. They had been warned, they chose not to take any notice. There have been a series of incidents from, I think, 2008 onwards, generally pointing in the direction of, hey, there's something not quite right about what we're doing in these, these high-rise flats. I call them high-rise because there are some not quite so high. Now, what we've got is a situation here, and the thing is, this particular absence of lottery is particularly worrying, because there are people in flats which are above 18 meters. They're treated in a particular sort of way. There's people in flats between 11 and 18 meters which are treated in another way, and there's people below 11 meters and not treated in any way at all. As we actually sort of found out a couple of weeks back, we've got somebody who's spent enormous sums of money trying to get some kind of remediation actually not just carried out, it's sort of paid for by the person who put up the inappropriate materials in the first place. So why are we taking different lengths of time on different aspects? They are all serious in that, as a consequence of fire, people could be killed. Properties are going to be damaged, that's for sure. That's guaranteed, because it will do in the case of fire. But what we're trying to avoid, of course, is the total absurdity of the, if you like, the residents crying out for action to be taken in Grenfell, where action wasn't taken at all. The deaths of 72 people actually drew everybody's attention to it. It became nationally important, as did the post office scandal. And here we are 8 years later, and some of these properties we haven't even found out that they've got problems with them, because nobody's actually sort of looked at them.
Well,
So
I've done a little bit of research. We obviously the the events at Royal Artillery Keys, or lack of events, it should be said, are ones that we are particularly focused on because Steve's there. So I'll address that first. But then there's more general points to make. So the reason why Royal Artillery Keys stands out, because my research said that there appears to be a two-speed system, which is the blocks that are standing out are ones that seem to get fixed first. He who shouts loudest gets noticed. However, Royal Artillery Keys bucks that trend. Leaseholder-led sites seem to be without a reasonable developer. They're left navigating that complex funding scheme. Low-rise buildings, as you mentioned, these sit at the back of the queue because policy initially focuses on high rises, and then the ones below, at the lowest one, don't even get looked at all. As you mentioned, we've had this guy on. I've forgotten his name. I do apologize. Who has spent a fortune on trying to get remediation to take place. Reason why Royal Artillery Keys stands out because it's a large riverside development, but not obscure at all. So its struggles highlight even high profile schemes can stall. The builder concerned seems to be reticent to engage or to fund complete remediation. And this undermines the government's current narrative, which is developers are stepping up, which it appears to be balderdash, if you ask me. What reticence looks like in practice: delays, of course, slow or no visible progress. As you say, 8 years on, and look where we are. Passing the buck. The builder pointed to leaseholders, managing agents, or government funds, rather than taking responsibility, getting on with it. And finally, silence or just plain obfuscation. Residents often left in the dark with vague statements, often being gaslighted by councils, etc., until they end up fighting amongst themselves rather than acting as one, as a force for good. It seems not just sad, but maddening. To challenge points I would like to push out is that and this is a question for you, do you think government should compel reluctant developers like Barrett and so on with hard deadlines and penalties rather than relying on voluntary pledges?
Is this a question for the general public, or is this a question for me?
This is for you, sir. I want your opinion. But also, if anybody is watching who feels strongly about this, please jump in, or at least hit it afterwards.
I think what would be useful if somebody actually agreed with the way the government and local councils are handling this thing, and they agree. I mean, somebody from Greenwich would be absolutely fine. Because as far as Greenwich are concerned, that particular sort of council there's absolutely nothing wrong with Royal Artillery Keys. Now, if there's nothing wrong with it, what has been the struggle? What has been the hold up for all this particular sort of time? And why are we carrying out remediation if it was deemed that everything was sort of perfectly adequate?
Now, wasn't there a place similar to Royal Artillery Keys that made a big fuss and got sorted?
Well, the problem is getting sorted and not getting sorted. We have to admit, I guess, that Greenwich have got the go-ahead now. The intervention of the council to suggest that there's nothing wrong inside the building is purely the exterior that requires attention. Has enabled certain things to maybe start. They're meant to be starting to happen at the end of this particular sort of end of this particular month, aren't they?
That's right.
We'll find out from Steve exactly what is going on, because it seems the residents are the last people to hear about it. But when you look at it, the Royal Borough Council of Kensington and Chelsea, responsible for looking after their residents in places like the Grenfell Tower, they have actually just sort of concluded who they think may be responsible for and want to be claiming damages from all these various people who contributed to it. I noticed they haven't actually admitted liability themselves. Whereas when you look at someone like Greenwich, where they're saying everything's perfectly fine, they aren't admitting any liability either. Yet because they have independently all accepted the fact, because they're all in agreement with the council leader there. So because they have independently all agreed to what is going on, because part of the hold up there, if we actually look at it, why does some get started sooner? Because they were complaining, naturally enough, in that particular direction, Royal Artillery Keys, they were complaining that it wasn't being taken seriously enough, and they weren't looking into the appropriate detail to actually carry out the remediation effectively. And
but this is not just about bricks and cladding, is it? It's about a fundamental loss of trust. If a builder can dodge responsibility at RAC, what does that say about the system as a whole?
Well, the system as a whole has failed. I mean, we've noticed this. Even the government itself is making sort of serious errors of judgment. They're suggesting that everything above 18 meters will be resolved by 2029. When we actually look at the time that it's taken so far for nothing to happen, and what we've actually sort of reduced it now, we're actually sort of reduced now. Within 4 years, everything is going to be completed. And we find out, for example, Royal Artillery Keys is going to take 2 years to complete the remediation, with people covered in sackcloth whilst the process is actually sort of going on. It just sort of does beg for this. And sadly, places which we have used this, we've got to find a different term for this. Places have been remediated according to the standards that have been decided by the builders themselves and the constructors. They are far short of what is deemed to be safe. And this has been a proven fact. So even those who supposedly were remediated earlier on, they are only remediated to a particular standard.
Apparently there are panels being left on, XPS panels, which share pretty much a similar constituency to firelighters. In fact, someone even did a test on it. It goes up completely in flames, drips down, and causes the very problem that Grenfell suffered. I think it's absurd. The pad standard to which they're being remediated is, as Steve has pointed out on many occasions, watered down. So they're not safe, as you say.
Well, it's a little bit like, and we actually sort of find this particular sort of situation, and it's highly, if it wasn't so seriously dangerous, it would be highly amusing. We have the builders themselves have nominated the big bad the master builders. The master builders have nominated their own guys to actually say whether this is to appropriate sort of standard. So the building control guys walk in and say, have a cup of coffee, absolutely fine, guys. Just carry on what we're doing.
But it appears to be this. Yeah, that's fine. And it's pathetic, because we all know that if you keep doing that, at some point, someone is going to lose their life. And then what are you going to do? It's going to be a far more serious affair. And all the fingers will be pointing at you guys. I mean, I'm talking to the so-called master builders.
Well, I think what we actually sort of perceive here, this is what I was trying to say about it. So, right. If you like, they've had their cup of coffee, and presumably there hasn't been any asbestos or anything falling into their cups of coffee while they were having their sort of cups of coffee. Right. Then we have 15 years later, 17 years later, after it's been built, at that particular point in time, and only over 15 years later, a decade and a half later, building control not Grenfell, building control in Royal Artillery Keys, RAQ, whatever we choose to call it, building control there, hang on, this did not meet standards as they stood at the time of the build. And then you have, so this happened in 2019, then we have 5 years later, a highly experienced and very, very well qualified council and council leader deem that there was nothing inappropriate about what happened.
What's interesting is, because it's on record that at some point they said there was. Then they backpedaled and said there wasn't. And then most recently said, well, actually, we don't get involved in these things, so we're going to stay impartial. Well, if you're going to stay impartial, what about your previous statements, which have said one way there has been and then there isn't? It's so inconsistent.
Well, we're impartial now. And therefore, if somebody dies as a consequence of our inadequacies in performing in the office that we've been actually nominated to sort of run, if something actually sort of happens as a consequence, we're impartial. We're impartial. Are you going to do what they're doing and, you know, Kensington and Chelsea, and sort of turn around and sort of say, oh, look at all these people that made mistakes. This is done by this. Anyway, we detract from what we were speaking about. But we do and we don't, because there still hasn't been the final decision made in certain places. We know in the likes of Chelsea, for example, remediation has been carried out, but not to the standards that the residents need, not to the standard that the insurers need, not to the standard that any fire officer could actually turn around and sort of say, oh yes, we consider this to be safe, not to the standard that a mortgage lender would lend money. Yet somehow or other, we have this thing that's being passed by somebody because they're using this pass without this second S, PAS. I suppose there's other letters one could actually sort of use about the quality of their particular sort of standard.
Yeah, well, you take the P off, and I think you're close to it.
Well, yes, or put a few other letters in. But when you actually look at the state of things as they are, first of all, nothing's going to happen by 2029 any more than has probably happened sort of so far to actually satisfy the needs and the safety of the people. We keep having these words coming out of the mouths of politicians, and there could be local councils, they could be senior councils, it could actually sort of be government ministers, that everybody is warranted, everybody deserves to have somewhere that they can call home, which is safe. Now,
and I think that's pretty much where I'm going to wind this up today. Thank you so much, Hamish. Everybody, as a basic human right, deserves to live somewhere that's safe. I mean, we'd no more advocate living in a place that potentially can burn down than we would advocate living in a war zone. It's just ridiculous. Thank you, Hamish McClay, for once again bringing this, hopefully in nice neon bright letters so anyone could understand it. And to all of you out there who follow this journey, please keep doing so. Please support Steve Day's effort on the building safety org, and please also follow this channel as we delve still deeper on the inadequacies of cladding and its reparations. Here we are in 2025. Until next week, get your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and please try and look after that mental health. Bye-bye now.
There's a tale about some folks with hammers and some nails. They'll promise you the moon, but their word always fails.